Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k Tyranids. Now in today's video we're going to be doing a review of one of the Tyranid monsters from the index, and we're going to be looking at the Haruspex. So we're going to be getting into the date card, going through that whole thing, all the abilities and some stratagems, and at the end of the video we're going to be giving a Planet 40k rating, which is a rating system out of 5. 0.5s are a thing. So if you want to get involved in that and put your rating out of 5 down below in the comments, let's do that as well. And we'll kind of get an average of what people are thinking in terms of the Haruspex's rating. But let's get into the data card, starting with the rear side of the data card. In fact, we're going to put the points on the top of the screen here. 125 points. What an absolute bargain. This thing used to be 170 points in 9th edition, so a 45 point reduction there. So we're going to go through this data card and see why he's so cheap, or it's so cheap. So let's see the war gear to begin. The model is equipped with a grasping tongue, ravenous maw and shoveling claws. And keywords, there's nothing really of note other than it's a monster. Yep, we all kind of know that. So let's flip that card over and let's check out the statistics and compare it to how it was in 9th edition. So the movement is still 8 inches, pretty good. The toughness has gone up to toughness 11, it used to be toughness 8. I mean, that is a standard for this edition, all the monster vehicles have gone up. But that does mean that some of the weapons that didn't get the strength boost are going to struggle against this unit. In fact, it was only yesterday on my Necron's channel where we spoke about the Scorbit Destroyers, which were prolific at basically removing monsters and vehicles, but they only are strength 7 now. They didn't get that strength boost, so when they're going up against a Haruspex, they're going to win on a 5+, so that toughness is important. Toughness 11. A 3+ armor save, which is actually a slight nerf. It used to be a 2+. And wounds, it was 15, it's now 14, we lost a wound. So even though we've gained some toughness, we've lost a save, we lost 1 piece of armor save and 1 wound. I think I'm okay with that overall. I'd rather have that toughness. That's going to negate a lot of wounds going through. The leadership is an 8+, and objective control is 4. Now there is a little bit of a damage table on the bottom right of your screen now. I'm just going to highlight that for you. While this model has between 1 and 5 wounds remaining, each time it makes an attack, subtract 1 from the hit roll. Now that doesn't degrade in terms of the quickness, like in the previous edition, I think it was when it got to 7 wounds or less. Might be wrong there. If it got to 7 wounds or less, it started to degrade, and it also included the movement as well. But the movement this edition doesn't get touched when you're degrading, so that is all good. So let's move down into the weapons area of this data card. First of all, we've got the grasping tongue, which has the precision ability. So you can fire this at a character that is hidden within a bodyguard unit or an attached unit. So it doesn't matter if there's a character surrounded by 20 different Orc boys or 20 Necron warriors. It doesn't matter. You're literally taking that shot at that character. Now it is only 1 attack. Ballistic skill 3+. Strength is 6. -2 AP. Used to be -3, so it lost a bit of AP. And the damage is D6 + 1. Now it used to be 3 damage. D6 + 1 on average is what? So it's 3 and 4. 3 or 4 on average, but then +1. So it's probably better, but it is more jankier because you could just roll a 1, and then it's a 1 + 1 is 2. But even if you roll a 2, that does actually equal what it was in 9th edition. So I suppose it is better. It's just a little bit janky. Sometimes you do really well with it, sometimes you don't. So that is the ranged weapon. As for the melee weapon, first of all, let's go with the Ravenous Maw. So this is 14 attacks, it used to be 15. We've lost an attack, but don't worry, we've got the shoveling claws still to come. 14 attacks, weapon skill 3+, strength is 7, -1 AP and 2 damage. So all of that is virtually the same apart from how many attacks we've got. Now that's probably going to kill around 6 guardsmen or 3 space marine intercessors. Pretty decent in terms of doing that kind of roll. You're likely going to be wounding on a 3+, if not a 2+. -1 AP and 2 damage. It's kind of a mixed bag there because you only get -1 AP, which is good against the guardsmen, but the 2 damage is good against the marines. So you're kind of jack of all trades, master of none there. Now the extra attacks are coming from the shoveling claws, and you're going to be getting 4 additional attacks on top of the maw. So this is weapon skill 3+ again, strength 14, which is high. -2 AP. It used to be -3 AP. And the damage is D6 + 1, it used to be D3 + 3. So it's not far off. What's D6 + 1? We just did this. It's about 5, 4 or 5 on average, whereas D3 + 3 is about 5 on average. So it's similar, but again, more janky. Now with those claws, you're going to probably kill 2 more Space Marines if you target those. I mean, it is strength 14. Do you need to? Sometimes you don't have an option because you've not got Space Marines as well as a vehicle in the same combat. So you're going to have to just throw them into the same unit as the Ravenous Maw. So it's a bit weird, that one, strength 14, but it does mean you can go attacking big stuff as well. Now if you were going up against one of those big things, monsters and vehicles that are under toughness 14, one should probably go through on average, so then it is d6 plus 1, so 4 to 5 damage on average for that one that goes through, and that's just from the 4 Shoveling Claw attacks, which are just basically extra attacks. So with all the melee weapons, I think it's a bit mixed. I know that it's got cheaper, but it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Like I said with the Ravenous Maw, the AP and damage doesn't quite go together, especially with the strength as well. Ideally, you want strength 8 to go in with 2 damage, so that you can pop Space Marines when you're wounded on a 2+. And the AP isn't really enough. Not for Space Marines, but for Guardsmen it is. But then you've got the Shoveling Claws at a strength 14, so yes, it's flexible in terms of the targets, but you want to be putting all these attacks into one unit, and it's just a mixed bag, isn't it? But it's still good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just a bit mixed. So then, of course, you've got to take into consideration our Tyranid rule. So we've got the option of having sustained hits 1 against infantry and swarm. You've got the lethal hits against monsters and vehicles, and high predators against precision. Now, this is going to be selected pre-game, of course. However, there will be ways of getting what you want when you want. So for example, if you've got 3 command points spare, I know that's quite a lot, but just hear me out. One of them could be from the Synaptic Insight stratagem, 1 command point in your command phase, and you can select one of those hyper adaptations to be active in addition to one of the other ones that you have active. So for example, if you chose Precision, which is high predators, but you really wanted the hyper aggression, which is lethal hits against monsters and vehicles, you can also turn that on for just 1 command point. And in fact, that would stack with the precision ability, so going up against characters is going to be cool too. Then you can stack this with Adrenal Surge for another stratagem for 2 command points, and effectively you're going to get critical hits on a 5+ rather than a 6+. So now those lethal hits and precision ability hits are all going to be working on a 5+, not a 6+, so you're going to be doing quite a lot of work with that. But I personally like the option of using the Synaptic Insight stratagem and turning on the precision ability with high predators. If you've got a character in the unit and that's the targeted unit, and you turn this on with your 14 attacks at strength 7 -1 AP 2 damage, you're going to be wounded on a 3+. -1 AP 2 damage is plenty when you've got the precision ability unlocked. Bearing in mind as well, you've got the Grasping Tongue with the precision ability as well. This is all going to stack and that character is going to suffer. Right, let's move back into the abilities on the data card. We've got Deadly Demise D3, so it explodes on a roll of a 6, and D3 mortal wounds within 6 inches. It's got the faction ability of Synapse, but it's of course not got the Synapse keyword. It will need to be within range of Synapse, which is 6 inches unless you've enhanced it in some shape or form. And the unique ability is Grisly Spectacle. So each time this model is selected to fight, after resolving its attacks, if one or more enemy units were destroyed by those attacks, each enemy unit within 6 inches of this model must take a Battle Shock test. Now when this edition first came about, I thought that was a really big ability. And it turns out it's not as big as you actually think, because once your opponent's command phase comes around, it ends. That ability, the Battle Shock has gone, the turn has gone. So they're gonna, if they're not under half wounds, then they're not taking another Battle Shock, they've just gotten rid of it. And then they're going to start scoring their primaries after that as well. So it only really comes into effect in your turn. If your opponent wants to use any stratagems, for example, that's only really the key use for this ability. So it's not that big of a thing. Considering what this unit lost from 9th edition, I'll give you a few examples here in fact. It used to be able to regain wounds by destroying models to a maximum of 3. That was one thing. The Grisly Spectacle used to be something completely different, which was subtract 2 from the leadership of units within 6 inches. So that could count in your opponent's command phase when they're doing, if that was this edition, which it isn't, but if they were doing a Battle Shock test, that would count there, but it's not. And the Death Throes ability, that is still there in fact. So it's only the 2 abilities that have either lost or been changed. So let's go into some unique synergy from the Tyranids Index, starting off with one of the stratagems, which is Rapid Regeneration. Now it's 1 command point, and you're either using it in your opponent's shooting phase or in either of the fight phases, either yours or your opponent's. And once you are being targeted, so the Haruspex gets targeted by an attack, you're going to effectively get a 6+ Furno pain save, and if you are within Synapse, you're going to get a 5+ Furno pain save instead, which is pretty nice. That's going to keep the resiliency up. And bear in mind, if you wanted to use any of the stratagems that we have noted this video, you could be using a Hive Tyrant with Will of the Hive Mind. So any friendly Tyranids unit within 12 inches of your Hive Tyrant gets to use a stratagem for free, even if it's already been used that phase. Now, one of those stratagems that we mentioned earlier in the video in particular, which was Adrenal Surge, is 2 command points, which is quite pricey. You could be using that for free. So that combination we spoke about earlier would only actually cost you 1 command point, not 3. Pretty cool. So that's all I've really got in terms of index synergy. There's not really much synergy to talk about. I mean, there is the standard stuff of Venom Thropes and Zone Thropes and all that stuff, but I don't think it's as useful on this kind of model. So we're going to get straight into the battlefield role for the Haruspex. So for me, it's another frontline unit that needs to terrorize infantry models. Yes, they've got the strength 14, but I think they're better used to run at groups of infantry. Take the 5 intercessors down per turn if you're going up against Space Marines. And just a single turn alone almost makes your points back. And then of course you're going to be soaking up a ton of attacks because you're toughness 11 and you've got 14 wounds. Having a couple of these running down either the centre or one on each flank is going to really make your opponent think about their battle plans. Now this is an advantage to us because this isn't our main battle plan. This is just a distraction. We're going to have our own plan, which could be a second wave of monsters going forward. Maybe it's your Zone Thropes as well as your Hive Tyrant perhaps. Maybe you've got a Gaunt Swarm going up the board to take board control, but your opponent isn't going to be looking at that. They're going to be looking at these Haruspexes that are literally running into their deployment zone and causing chaos. But I'd also utilise that precision range attack and aim to not only fire at a unit that's got a leader, but also charge it. Infantry counters, even with Thunder Hammers, are not going to be that effective this edition against toughness 11, because those kind of weapons just haven't had the strength boost like they did have in the previous edition. So let's get on to the pros and cons for the Haruspex, starting with the pros. 45 points cheaper than they were in 9th edition, which is an absolute steal. They are now toughness 11, not toughness 8, which is mega effective against those small arms fire. They're going to need 6s to wound. Standard bolt guns need 6s, and even the power fists and things like that are still going to need 5+. It's got extra attacks at strength 14. It's clearing infantry units in melee with ease. It's got the precision range attack, which could be nice on a character that's hiding within a unit. And it could potentially force battle shot, which will deny stratagems for the rest of your turn. And it's also the same cost as a Khan effect, so if you do prefer having Haruspex, or if you're just playing an incursion game and you don't want to take 2 Khan effects with old One Eye because you're trying to save on points, then this is a very good option in incursion level. As for the cons, it's lost that 2+ armor save as it's now a 3+. It's also lost a wound since 9th edition. It's got not much index synergy as other units in the index has. And finally, it doesn't regain wounds anymore like it used to in 9th edition, which I thought was a really cool ability. So let's get on to the Planet 40k rating for the Tyranid Haruspex. Now, as I've been doing this video, I've not really been feeling it, to be honest with you. I'm not really feeling this unit. Now, when I did a video, I think it was a few weeks ago, it might be a bit more than that now, we did a top 5 units or must-have units within the Tyranids index, and I didn't have it in my top 5, and there was a lot of comments saying, how is this not in your top 5? And I just don't see it. I mean, it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's not bad at all. It's actually pretty impressive. But it's just sort of a bit all over the place for me. Going back to that weaponry, the strengths are all a mixed bag. You can't just sort of select one or the other. You've got 14 strength 7 attacks and 4 strength 14 attacks. The likelihood is that they're all going into one unit of, whether it's Orc Boys, whether it's a Ghost Ark, a Bloodthirster, they're all going into the same unit, and sometimes that will be effective and sometimes it won't be effective. Also, the Ravenous Maw just seems a little bit odd. Strength 7 is in an odd place anyway, but minus 1 AP and 2 damage. It's like it's a powerful weapon, but the AP isn't quite there. But overall, it is quite a cheap monster, and that's why it's still high. It's regarded as a decent unit in this edition. So for that reason, I'm going to be going with the Planet 40k rating of 4.5 out of 5. It's still pretty good. I just think there's better units in the codex, in the index, not codex. Right guys, that is it from me today. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.